let's talk about the Hill Cantons setting and books by Chris Kutalik. There are currently 4 published books. There is a sort of semi-related free adventure, and there are 2 compendiums or appendices or something, again free online. Now, this is a Slavic-inspired acid fantasy setting. By Slavic, I mean Slavic myth, though perhaps also modern Slavs. You'd have to ask Chris. But the acid fantasy thing, that's maybe the key takeaway. It's nice to have a non-traditional chivalrous fantasy inspiration. I like chivalrous Western fantasy, but it's nice to have something slightly different, more Eastern European here. But the acid fantasy is, I think, the big selling point. And let's say acid fantasy is weird, psychedelic, and usually funny. Jodorowsky's films are an example of acid genre in other contexts. And some examples of the way that works are, well, the NPCs, and I'll talk about that a bit, but say that the 2 adventure locations in the 4th book, What Ho Frog Demons, are a horrendous trap dungeon run by frog demons or demonettes who go around setting ridiculous traps and generally being obnoxious, and the other one is a village being taken over by a gigantic beet, which is actually an alien from beyond the stars, a very Lovecraftian but ridiculous monster. This sort of combination of the psychedelic and strange, the violent coloured world, but with a kind of ridiculous twist. Now, of the 4 books, Slumbering Ursine Dunes, the first one, I'm going to be able to flick to it on this screen share, so you can look there. But Slumbering Ursine Dunes is the first of the books. It's 60 pages. It's got a 25 point crawl and 2 dungeon locations, 2 kind of developed dungeon locations. It's got factional play and it's got classes, and it has a unique-ish gimmick that Chris Kutalik uses in his books, the Chaos Index, how the weird of magic affects the area as you adventure in it. Are you more chaotic or are you more lawful? The idea of an interactive world. And the dunes are magical sand, and I think the big selling points here are, 1, the factions. You've got Yaramir the Smith, a crazy, half crazy old coot who has his own village. He's a lawful good warrior of the sun god who settled down and will help you adventure in the dunes, but will never actually admit he knows anything about the dunes. He'll constantly mishear you. There is, so for instance, you say you want to go play a tune. What? There's Medved the Master, chaotic good. He is a bear godling who is, potentially very helpful and not malicious, but not very organised. A bit of a mess. There is the Eld, these David Bowie / Eldar from Warhammer 40,000 demons, or devils rather. They're the equivalent of devils from the Cold Hells, and they're lawful good. They hate fun. They're lawful evil. They hate fun. They want to ruin your time. Andre the Reaver, he's a wereshark who wants to ruin your time, but without any moral superstructure. He's just hungry. And the dunes, so you've got the factional play where you can play people off against each other. You can go to their different locations. You can get assistance from some of them. All of them, even the chaotic evil Andre the Reaver, are open to an alliance. And I think that's good. That's a really classic dynamic in D&D, and Kutalik is very good at that. There's rumour tables. There are a variety of enjoyable wandering monsters. There is a point crawl map here, which is pretty clear for use and attractive, and the locations are all interactive. Even the empty locations are interactive because you go there to hide and rest. But there's centaur toll collectors working for Medved. There's figures of Slavic legend like the Poloviks in a suspiciously nice looking wheat field. There's some petrified pines. There is Sir Eld, who is considered a surprisingly soft Eld because he has some sense of chivalry, even though he's still a racist maniac. And there are the 2 adventure sites, which are both good. One, it really feeds into the factional idea of the whole thing. Oh, there's also sentient megafauna beavers, and I love that kind of stuff. But yeah, there's these 2 locations. The Golden Barge is full of ghouls who want to help you, because they really generously want to help you into unlife. And there's 3 silver platters piled high with delicious smelling, perfectly grilled long pork. A ghoul is fastidiously arranging the meats in decorative shapes. Sounds of combat in room 2 cause him to hide under the table and wait in ambush. So you can immediately see that's good, quick summary. That's true of all his writing, really. It's funny. I think it's funny. I've run several of these books and I enjoy them at the table, but it's worth noting straight away that, as I've already kind of hinted, the humour, some people will like it more than others. There's then also a control tower with a 4-armed white ape, and so that's 25 rooms. Adventure Site 2, Glittering Tower, factional warfare between Medved, chaotic good, and the Eld, lawful evil, but they're sort of somewhat hived off from each other, and you can choose who to side with. Medved particularly obviously wants to get rid of these Eld. And then back at the back of the book, so that's yet more. You can see it's a big location with were-sharks as well. Chaos Event Index. If you do crazy stuff happens. If you create lawful situations, less crazy stuff happens. The weirder stuff gets, Tesseract might open, and Eld bubble ships might arrive. There might be a battle between different parties, different factions. There might be the veil between the world rips. It's replaced by a point is replaced by a locale from another plane of existence, and you can see that there's a table here which tells you what helps and what harms the chaos index. Bestiary with monsters, and including Pelgrains from Jack Vance. And at the back there there's some unique spells, unique classes, cave dwarfs and warbears, and the marching song of the warbears. So lots of content in there, very usable. I think justly considered maybe I'm not sure if I'd say it's his best, but justly considered the classic of his works. Fever Dreaming Marlinko City supplements. It again has a nice cover. The big thing is going here. This is half a city toolbox and half an extended massive adventure location. So it falls in city supplement terms between, say, Gabor Lux's recent Backlin, the Jewel of the Sea for his Aurelion setting, which is really mostly a massive adventure location. And on the other hand, something like SJR5 Rock of Braal, which has some adventure location-y bits, but is mostly, here's a really interesting toolkit to use in a Spelljammer game. So Marlinko is halfway between that. It's slightly longer than Slumbering Ursine Dunes. It has similar stuff. Again, there are a variety of factions, the 4 contradas, the 4 quarters of the city. And it has 2 adventure sites. Lady Zara's Townmance, that's a Vampiresses, a Strigoy's home base, and the Catacombs of the Church of the Blood Jesus, which is... let's talk about the humour here. This is a thing where... it's not entirely my jam, and it's for a variety of reasons. It is fun and it's a well-written location, but this is a key example of where you're going to make your choices about humour. Is an entire location spun out of really a Father Ted character, and the effect that player, because it was a PC at the time, had upon the world? Is that something you're going to enjoy? Is that too much of an in-joke? Is it too narrow? Is the humour too much of a particular sort? And I think bluntly, everyone who's reading a fairly comedy focused D&D supplement, even one as successful as the Hill Cantons books, will find bits they don't want to use. Some of it, very little of it would probably come with a content warning for if you're into that. Some of it would, but some of it's close. Some of it definitely is more like, that's not quite to my taste, than other bits. But yeah, beyond that, there are then a variety of toolbox things, crime and punishment, running long and short cons, more adventures in Marlinko, a chaos index, buying and selling goods and services, that's 7 pages, and rules for carousing. Kutalik is one of those who likes carousing XP rules. And then long appendices, including a tiger wrestling minigame. And again, this is, it's got a nice map there. Again, it's usable. And each of the contradas as a location is well put together. Locations to go in the Contrada. This is the APS, the Sullen Apiarian Contrada. It lists 5 different locations you could go, and then it gives you an encounter table. And the encounters are very tersely but evocatively written, and that's another Kutalik thing. 2d6 young rakes. They will at the minimum taunt and jeer the party if they aren't sworn members of the Contrada. There's great rivalry between the Contradas. They have kind of games and competitions. They like to prank each other and steal each other's trophies, much like university colleges or whatever else. You've got the Mendacious Mercator Contrada, where you might meet some flirts or dancing drunks, or Dr. inverted commas Otto Philandrus. You've got the Golden Swine. You can also see here random building tables. So it's a toolkit, but one that gives you a lot of directly playable stuff. And then the adventure sites are similar to the ones in Slumbering Ursine Dunes. Lady Zara's Town Mounts, I think, is the better of the two. It's one you can more directly imagine a lot more parties going for, more hooks into. The Church of the Blood Jesus is perhaps a bit more specific. Yeah, that's a rumour table there, which is useful. And here we are at the adventure sites. I'll move on from there, but I could go on. It's a very interesting book. It's a very successful city supplement, I think. Some people say it's their favourite. I'm not sure if it's my favourite, but it's definitely one where if you can open a book and every page has several gameable things on, then that's good. And this is something which says to you, here's a city and you can do a bunch of stuff in it. And yeah, you're going to have to do some work to add to the world. Because at that point, of course, he's only done these 2 books in the world. And they're both relatively small. But nonetheless, you put some work in and you'll be able to have a good time. And it's a base you can constantly come back to, get involved in these rivalries, have these memorable NPCs, these over-the-top NPCs, Herloy Cladivo and his tiger wrestling, František the Checkered Mage, who is incredibly friendly but also a ruthless businessman, that sort of thing. Lady Zara, I mean, you don't have to fight the vampiress. Why not make an alliance with her? Just maybe don't go around her when she's hungry, that sort of thing. Misty Isles of the Eld, again, good cover. Here, this is... the gimmick is it's a genuinely quite large point crawl. It's bigger than the other 2 so far. It's 100 pages. And there are 4 adventure sites, big point crawl, and again, new class, which is a psionics class, a bestiary. There are maps at the back. I'll use this point in my own disorganised way to point to an issue of disorganisation that some of us may dislike. Maps are generally hived off at the back, not always, but they are generally, so for instance, in this case, there are maps in line, but in Slumbering Ursine Dunes, they're all at the back. So they are more or less usable depending on your preferences for maps. But yeah, there's plenty of stuff in there again. Here, the Eld have taken over an island and they've turned it into a really, really depressing, annoying place. And your implicit job is to go ruin their fun. The Anti-Chaos Index is where you are essentially, you're attempting to cause trouble for these lawful evil killjoys. And the more trouble you cause for them, the more beauty and nature return to the island. The idea that actually you're here to win, it's, you know, in one sense a pretty easy let's go be the good guys adventure, which given that this setting, the Hill Cantons, has a sword and sorcery, you're not necessarily good guys kind of feel, it's a nice thing sometimes to say to players, just go be good guys. I think most players do enjoy an opportunity to be like that. Yeah, again, things are good here. This is definitely, again, there's some ripe humour. It depends what you're into. There are still factions, though. So, for instance, there's Zoe the Outcast, one of whose brains is actually kind of nice for an Eld. Very racist, otherwise not a complete scumbag. And then there is Overcaptain Klyax, who has been subverted by the demons of the Hot Hell, and who wants to overthrow his lawful masters. So you can work with different factions, though they're always liable to screw you over. And you can go around, well, the 4 locations. One is a Potemkin village which is meant to look like an awesome city, but is basically cardboard cutouts. But there is an eld bunker underneath. There is a plantation house with the eld human slaves, the eld men. There's Monument 5 guarding where they're doing some of their dark stuff, and the vat complex, which is half the working vat complex where they turn humans into other stuff. But then one half of it has been taken over by a hot hell demon, and so it's a different kind of, different kinds of base storming. One is going into a heavily occupied, functioning scientific facility. The other half of the vat complex is dealing with a monster dungeon with weird ghosts and a demon who's waiting for you. So there's plenty of variety, and I maybe it is actually really my background in 40k, but I think the Eld are a striking villain. Also pretty disgusting, kind of just anti-all fun, incredibly prissy, difficult, over the top, comically evil, and I think, as I say, because this is a let's be good guys adventure, that's fun. Finally, the last major product in the line is What Ho Frog Demons, which you can see here has the PDF is actually bookmarked. That's nice. But yeah, What Ho Frog Demons. It is Further Adventures in Greater Marlinko Canton. This is a book, if you want to run a campaign here, you've got to get. This links together the 3 other books, and it adds 2 more adventure sites and a bunch of other stuff. So it's a funny thing. I remember at the time of it being published, the whole thing was that it kept getting delayed in being finished because there's more to add. You can see that there's 30 pages of just the kind of, this is the place, the hex crawl, weird sites, extra encounters. Then there's 2 dungeons which take up another 60 pages, but then you have another 20 pages of appendices. Frog demon generator, if you want to randomly generate new frog demons. A bucolic village generator and variety of things. Fun time misadventures in Marlinko villages. Carousing in the countryside. Rustic dwellings and their inverted commas characters. Again, like Fever Dream Marlinko, there's an enormous amount of toolkit stuff here, so that you can make new villages. So you can have essentially random encounters as you go, but on the fly, based on the fact they've arrived in a village. So a village quirk might be the old ways, terrible secret. They need a king for a day to club on the bridge of the Harvool's second cousin and ensure the frost will not kill the plum blooms and ruin the plum brandy harvest. Or, again, that old ruin, everyone's scared of a nearby ruin. Or they're just dull. Indeed, would not every jaded adventurer want to recover here, own a few cows and help with the ritual pig slaughter? So you can give a village a character. You can add in some people who live there. A boyar priest banker, or a quarterling tinker who has nearly completely assimilated into village life, and then you can add a misadventure. So again, toolkit wise, it's very strong. In terms of the rest of the content, the weird sites are good. You can see they are like the point crawl, though this time we are talking about a hex crawl rather than a point crawl. There are point crawls within the hex crawl if you link to the other adventures. So for instance, you've got Lady Vander's Manor, so you can go and deal with the polyandric Lady Vander who wants to find new husbands. You could go to the travel hostel of the Crow-footed Witch, or an Eld crash site, and we know how awful Eld are already. There's a Warbear Hill Fort. There's a Roosterbard Hootenanny. For you Robin Hood fans, you can see lots of the same weird stuff as you wander around, and those places aren't on the map. Those places you place, so you've got the locations on the map, and you've got these places you can locate yourself around the map, and you've got the village generator, and then you've got, as well as that, you have the 2 adventure sites, and they're both, he calls them Saturday night specials. Frog Demon Temple is a trap dungeon. It is Tomb of Horrors, but for 2nd to 4th level characters or something like that. It is pretty lethal for characters at that level. It's certainly not one to, and he says this, not one to set players up for. You want them to know it's dangerous so that they accept their fate. When they die, they are not angry. There is the good maps on this one. There are awful traps, and there's the particularly dreadful um, three idols of frog demons who turn into a band with magical instruments. Who is there anything more annoying than that idea? There is a couple of demi-plane locations, one of which, the Salacious Salon of Sixaploy. I don't actually know how it connects to the rest of it. That's a problem. I've read the book several times and I don't know how it actually connects to the Frog Demon Temple. There are occasionally editing and oversight errors like that, but not many. Finally, the Beat for the Beet God, good 40k reference, but also it's a sort of advancing chaos situation where this Beet God's infection, like the Star Gods from something like Colour Out of Space, or The Weird That Befell Drigbolton, The Adventure by Gavin Norman, spreads out, infects the village and causes more and more trouble, and you, depending on when your players act and what they do, they might be able to rescue people, maybe things will just get worse. And he does say, if you want to play this in a particular way, if they really fail, this is going to become an international problem, not just a local problem. But yeah, they're 4 very good books. The small additional things are also fun. I would recommend them just as top of the line books, but I'd say as a setting, it is coherent and you can play it. You've got to do your own work, until the omnibus comes out, to get the hex crawl book, and then think, okay, well, how do the locations fit in here, and what do I need to develop? What dungeons do I need to develop on top of that, so that my players have other places to go? It's not necessarily automatically friendly, as I find this with lots of OSR. It's not necessarily made for first level characters. When you're releasing adventures that are second or third level start at the lower end, you're indicating a style of play which is maybe more like Gabolox's Helvetia is going to be, starts at second level. I like first level play. I like dingy little guys running around with 1 or 2 hit points and no equipment. I think that's fun. This doesn't necessarily go in that direction. As I said, the humour, I wouldn't say it's take or leave. I think most people will find some of it funny because he's a funny guy. But there's definitely some judgment to exercise. There is a lot of soft body horror. There is a degree of in-jokiness, both from the original campaign, but also you got to know references to get what he's going on about. So as a DM, you may end up thinking, I've no idea what he's talking about. I don't know how to make it funny because I don't know what it is. So, you've got to be aware of those things. But in a general sense, I would strongly recommend these for people who want, by buying the whole set, for people who want a quirky, funny, alternatively sourced, not traditional fantasy setting with a lot of gameable material, because that's maybe the number one takeaway I'd write, is that I'd give you, is that Kutalik basically only writes stuff you can play at your table. If you have read these or run these, or if you know the solution to my mystery of where that secret sub-level actually connects to, please tell me in the comments. Till next time.